The annual Thompson family dinner was always an exercise in humiliation, but this year promised to be especially brutal. I adjusted my simple black dress designer, though none of them would notice, and stepped into the private dining room of La Maison, the city's most exclusive restaurant. "Look who finally made it," my cousin Ethan called out, his Rolex catching the light as he raised his wine glass. "The small business owner herself." I forced a smile, taking my assigned seat at the far end of the table, the spot reserved for the family's least successful member. From here, I had a perfect view of the downtown skyline through the restaurant's floor-to-ceiling windows. Perfect for what I had planned. "Olivia," my Aunt Margaret's voice dripped with false concern. "We were just discussing everyone's achievements this year. Do you have anything to share?" I took a sip of water, noting how they'd served everyone else wine without asking my preference. They probably assumed I couldn't afford the restaurant's premium wine list. If they only knew I owned the vineyard that supplied it. "Still running my consulting business," I said quietly, watching their reactions. "Oh right," my cousin Victoria chimed in. "The little IT thing. Are you still working from your apartment?" Actually, I worked from the top floor of the gleaming glass tower that dominated the skyline behind them, the one with my name on it. But they didn't know that. To them, I was just Olivia, the cousin who'd turned down a real job at Uncle Robert's investment firm to start her own business. "Something like that," I replied, opening my menu, though I already knew every item by heart. I'd designed the restaurant's inventory management system myself. "Well," Uncle Robert boomed from the head of the table, "let's hear about everyone's real accomplishments. Ethan just made partner at his law firm." Applause rippled around the table. I didn't mention that Ethan's firm had been desperately trying to land a contract with my company for months. And Victoria's hedge fund managed its first billion-dollar portfolio this quarter. More applause. I bit back a smile, remembering how my shell company had quietly acquired controlling interest in that same fund last week. "Even little Charlie's startup got acquired for $50 million, Aunt Margaret added, patting my youngest cousin's shoulder. I'd actually been the one who arranged that acquisition, though Charlie had no idea. None of them did. They didn't know that Olympus Technologies, the mysterious industry giant that had been systematically acquiring or outperforming all their companies, was actually mine. "How about you, Olivia?" Uncle Robert asked, not bothering to hide his smirk. "Still doing computer repair or whatever it is?" Before I could answer, my phone buzzed. A message from my CFO. "Acquisition of Thompson Investment Group complete. You now own your uncle's company." I smiled, tucking my phone away. The timing couldn't have been more perfect. "Actually," I started, but was cut off by the arrival of champagne bottles of crystal, courtesy of Ethan, who never missed a chance to flaunt his wealth. "Don't worry, Olivia," he said with exaggerated generosity. "I ordered enough for everyone. My treat." "How thoughtful," I murmured, thinking of the wine cellar in my penthouse that made his bottle look like corner store champagne. The dinner proceeded as it always did, a parade of accomplishments and one-upmanship, with regular pauses to remind me of my apparent lack of success. They compared vacation homes while I sat quietly. They discussed their luxury cars while assuming I still took the bus. They debated yacht clubs while thinking I could barely afford rent. "Remember when Olivia was the smart one?" Victoria laughed during the main course. Top of her class at MIT, everyone thought she'd be the family success story. "Well, not everyone can handle the real business world," Uncle Robert declared. "Some people just aren't cut out for big success." I checked my phone again. Another message from my CFO. "Thompson Investment Group board meeting scheduled for tomorrow. Would you like to attend as the new owner?" "Speaking of business," Aunt Margaret turned to me with practiced concern, "are you still living in that tiny apartment in the East Side? Because Robert might have an entry-level position open if you're finally ready to join the real world." I looked up at the skyline again. The sun had set and my building, the Thompson Tower, named that way deliberately, was lit up against the night sky. My name glowed in 40-foot letters at the top, though from their angle they couldn't see it yet. "Actually," I said, "I've been meaning to talk about that. I'm moving." Finally admitted defeat? Ethan smirked. "Moving back home to Mom and Dad?" "No," I replied calmly. "I bought a new place. You might know it, the penthouse of Thompson Tower." The silence that followed was delicious. That's impossible," Uncle Robert sputtered. That building belongs to Olympus Technologies. The penthouse alone is worth $30 million. I finished for him. I know. I set the price myself. Victoria's wine glass froze halfway to her lips. What are you talking about? I stood up slowly, smoothing my dress. Why don't I show you? The view from up there is spectacular. Show us. Charlie asked. How could you possibly dash? Because I own it, I said simply. I own the whole building. Just like I own this restaurant. And Victoria's hedge fund. And as of about an hour ago, Thompson Investment Group. Uncle Robert's face went from red to white. You're lying. Olympus Technologies owns I am Olympus Technologies. I cut him off. Every subsidiary, every acquisition, every competitor that's been driving you all crazy for the past 5 years? That was me. I pulled out my phone and opened my banking app, turning it to face them. The balance displayed made Ethan choke on his expensive champagne. But you work from your apartment, Victoria stammered. No, I corrected her. I let you think I worked from my apartment. I let you think a lot of things. It was easier that way. More entertaining too. The maitre d' appeared at my elbow right on schedule. Miss Thompson, your helicopter is ready on the roof. Helicopter? Aunt Margaret whispered. Would you all like to see my tiny apartment now? I asked, enjoying the shock on their faces. The helipad has room for everyone. Uncle Robert stood up abruptly, his chair scraping against the floor. Now see here, No, Uncle Robert, I said firmly. You see here. I pointed to the skyline where the Thompson Tower dominated the view. See that building? The one you've been trying to get a meeting with the owner of for the past year? Watch this. I pulled out my phone again and opened an app I'd had designed specifically for this moment. With one tap, the building's lights began to change, spelling out a message across its facade. Welcome to my office, family. The entire restaurant fell silent as the message glowed against the night sky. Every diner, every server, every person in view of the windows stopped to stare at the display of power. That's not. Ethan began but couldn't finish. Not what? I asked. Not possible. Not what you expected from the family failure. Not the kind of success you thought I was capable of. I gestured to the maitre d', who began distributing folders to each family member. Inside you'll find some interesting documents, I continued. Ownership records, acquisition details, and most importantly, proof that while you were all busy mocking my small business, I was quietly building an empire. They opened the folders with trembling hands, their faces growing paler with each page they turned. But enough business talk, I said, picking up my purse Hermes, though they probably thought it was a knockoff. Shall we take that helicopter ride? I'd love to give you a tour of my little IT thing, from the top floor of my building. The silence that followed was broken only by the sound of Uncle Robert's folder hitting the floor, scattering papers that detailed how his company now belonged to his supposedly unsuccessful niece. Oh, and Ethan? I added, pausing at the door. About that law firm partnership, you might want to hold off on redecorating your office. Olympus Technologies will be making some changes there too. Part 1 ends with my family frozen in their seats, their carefully constructed hierarchy shattered, as I walked toward the elevator that would take us to the helipad. They had no choice but to follow. After all, I wasn't just their embarrassing relative anymore. I was their boss. The private elevator ride to the restaurant's rooftop was silent except for the soft hum of machinery and the occasional rustling of papers as my family members continued to grip their folders like life preservers. Victoria kept checking her phone, probably trying to confirm my ownership of her hedge fund. Ethan's usual smirk had been replaced by a pale, tight-lined expression. Uncle Robert looked like he'd aged 10 years in 10 minutes. The helicopter waited on the roof, sleek, black, with the Olympus Technologies logo gleaming on its side. My pilot, Sarah, stood ready at the door. Good evening, Miss Thompson, she said professionally, though I caught the slight smile in her eyes. She'd been helping me plan this reveal for weeks. The whole family will be joining us tonight, I said, gesturing to my stunned relatives. Give us the full tour, please. Wait, Aunt Margaret grabbed my arm as I started toward the helicopter. Olivia, we should talk about this first. As a family. I looked pointedly at her hand until she released me. Oh, now you want to talk as a family? Now that you know I'm not just the embarrassing cousin with the small business, That's not fair, Victoria protested weakly. We didn't know dash. Exactly, I cut her off. You didn't know because you never bothered to ask. Too busy comparing vacation homes and luxury cars to notice what I was building. I turned to Sarah. Are we ready for takeoff? The night sky of downtown stretched before us as the helicopter lifted off. Through the windows, my family could now see what I'd been seeing for years. Their little world of inherited wealth and corporate politics was just a small part of a much bigger picture. Thompson Tower, Sarah announced as we circled the building. 90 stories, 2 million square feet of office space, and home to over 50 tech companies, all subsidiaries of Olympus Technologies. My name blazed across the top of the building, impossible to miss now. Uncle Robert pressed his face against the window, probably remembering all the times he'd tried to get a meeting with the building's mysterious owner. The top 5 floors are Ms. Thompson's private offices and residence, Sarah continued, including the penthouse, which features its own infinity pool, garden, and satellite command center. Satellite command center? Charlie squeaked. I smiled. Someone has to keep track of all those companies I've been acquiring. We landed on the building's private helipad and I led them through secure doors into my domain. The top floor opened up before us, all glass and steel and success, with sweeping views of the city in every direction. Welcome to my tiny apartment, I said, watching their faces as they took in the space. Would anyone like a drink? The wine cellar is just through there, though I'm afraid I don't stock crystal. I prefer the vineyard I own in Bordeaux. Ethan collapsed onto one of my custom-designed sofas, his legal papers scattered across his lap. How? He managed. How did you do all this without us knowing? I walked to my desk, a single piece of sculpted glass that probably cost more than his law firm partnership, and pressed a button. The wall behind me transformed into a series of digital displays showing real-time data from all my companies. I did it because you didn't know, I explained. Because every time you dismissed me, underestimated me, pushed me to the end of the table, I used that invisibility to build something bigger than any of you could imagine. But the money, Uncle Robert finally spoke, his voice hoarse. Where did you get the capital to dash? Buy little IT thing? I finished for him. That consulting business you all mocked? Wasn't just fixing computers. I developed security systems, network infrastructure, financial software. Every major bank in this city runs on my technology. Including yours, Uncle Robert. Or should I say my bank now? Victoria had made her way to the window, staring at the city below. The hedge fund, she whispered. You really own it? 60% controlling interest, I confirmed. Acquired through shell companies over the past year. Don't worry, you can keep your job. For now. Though we'll need to discuss your investment strategy. It's been a bit conservative. And my law firm? Ethan asked. That depends, I replied. Are you still interested in handling Olympus Technologies' legal work? Because I've been looking for new representation. Though you might want to update that pitch your firm sent me last month. The one where you claimed, and I quote, unparalleled expertise in tech industry law. He had the grace to look embarrassed. Aunt Margaret, who had been unusually quiet, suddenly burst out. But what about family? What about loyalty? I turned to her slowly. Loyalty? Like when you told everyone at last year's Christmas party that I was wasting my potential with my small business. Or when you suggested I apply for a secretarial position at Uncle Robert's company because, at least it's stable work? We were trying to help, she protested. No, I corrected her. You were trying to control. To keep me in my place. To maintain your comfortable hierarchy where success only counts if it fits your definition. I walked to a particular window, the one that offered the best view of the city's financial district. See that building there? The Preston Financial Center? I bought it last week. And that one next to it? That's where Victoria's hedge fund operates from offices I own. The law firm where Ethan just made partner? They lease their space from one of my subsidiaries. I turned back to face them. While you were all competing over who had the biggest house in the suburbs, I was buying the buildings that house your businesses. While you compared cars and watches, I was acquiring the companies you work for. And not one of you ever noticed because you were too busy feeling superior to pay attention. What are you going to do? Uncle Robert asked, his businessman's instincts finally kicking in. Fire us all. Take everything. I sat down at my desk, enjoying how they all unconsciously leaned forward, waiting for my verdict on their futures. Actually, I said, I'm going to teach you something about real success. Starting tomorrow, each of you will receive a detailed evaluation of your professional performance. Not your family connections, not your social status, but your actual work. Those who demonstrate real value will keep their positions. Those who don't. I let the sentence hang in the air. You can't do this, Victoria whispered, but there was no conviction in her voice. I already have, I replied. Check your email. The announcements go out to all employees tomorrow morning. Olympus Technologies is restructuring all its newly acquired assets. Merit over nepotism. Results over relationships. And what about family gatherings? Aunt Margaret asked. Will you still come to dinners now that you've won? I stood up and walked to a cabinet, pulling out a bottle of wine, one from my vineyard. That depends. Will I still be seated at the far end of the table? Will you still treat me like the family disappointment? They exchanged glances, decades of superiority crumbling around them. I thought not, I continued, pouring myself a glass. But I'm willing to start over. On new terms. Equal terms. And if we refuse? Ethan challenged, though his voice shook slightly. I smiled, taking a sip of wine. Then you can find new jobs. New offices. New companies to work for. Though. I gestured to the wall of displays showing my corporate holdings. You might find that difficult in this city. One by one they nodded, understanding finally dawning in their eyes. The family hierarchy hadn't just shifted, it had been completely dismantled. Now, I said, pressing another button that opened hidden panels in the walls, revealing a private dining room with a table set for dinner. Shall we continue our family meal? I believe we were discussing everyone's achievements this year. They filed into the dining room, taking their seats, not in their usual pecking order but wherever they could find space. Uncle Robert no longer commanded the head of the table. Victoria's hedge fund success seemed less impressive now. Ethan's law firm partnership felt hollow. As we ate food prepared by my private chef, naturally, the conversation was different. For the first time they asked about my work. My real work. They listened as I explained the technology I'd developed, the companies I'd built, the empire I'd created while they weren't watching. Why didn't you tell us sooner? Charlie finally asked, his voice small. I set down my wine glass. Would you have believed me? Would you have accepted that the cousin you pitted had surpassed you all? Or would you have tried to take control, to claim credit, to insert yourselves into my success? They had no answer for that. As the evening wound down, I walked them back to the helipad. The city sparkled below us, a constellation of lights and possibilities that I had quietly conquered while they weren't looking. One more thing, I said as they prepared to board. Next family dinner will be here. Same dress code, different attitude. And everyone sits at the main table. They nodded, filing into the helicopter with what remained of their dignity. As they lifted off, I watched my name glowing on the building behind them, a beacon of success they could no longer ignore or dismiss. Back in my office, I poured another glass of wine and looked out over my city. My phone buzzed with messages. Already they were trying to adapt, to reposition themselves in this new reality where the family failure was actually the family power broker. But I didn't respond. Let them wait. Let them wonder. Let them finally understand what real success looks like. After all, I had an empire to run. And this time they were all working for me.